In the land of Skyrim, there are many Daedric artifacts we can acquire. Powerful items created or claimed by the many Daedric princes, godly beings that delight in toying with or testing mortals like us. Oftentimes, we use these Daedric artifacts to help us slaughter our enemies, or hang up on the wall in our home so that we may brag about how we earned the favor of Uncle Sheogorath or old Hermaeus Mora. But with so many Daedric princes handing out artifacts like Khajiit handing out skooma and elsewhere, there comes the question of which artifacts are the strongest and which are the weakest. But you can stop asking such questions because House Telvanni is here to answer them all. Hello my fellow hirelings of House Telvanni! I'm Neloth, and today we are going to be ranking all 30 Daedric artifacts in Skyrim. And yes, I said 30 because due to popular demand, we are also going to be talking about the 14 artifacts added in the Anniversary Edition to Skyrim. Now, if you are someone who hates all of the Creation Club paid mods that were added in the Anniversary Edition, I completely understand and feel free to use the timestamps down below to skip past the artifacts that weren't originally in the game. However, since most people have the Anniversary Edition of Skyrim at this point, it just makes sense to rope them all together into one big video. But I will be making clear which artifacts were originally in the game and which were added later in the top right corner. Also, we at House Telvanni will be ranking these artifacts by reliability, functionality, and utility. So with all that being said, let us perform some morally questionable deeds and dive straight in. Starting off in dead last place is the Fork of Horripilation, one of the Daedric artifacts of Sheogorath that was added in the Anniversary Edition. The Fork of Horripilation is just that, a fork that does a total of 1 damage to enemies. Now, to be fair, there is more to this fork than meets the eye. As we initially get this fork in the quest, put a fork in it, and are tasked with killing Netch with it to retrieve certain items. And the fork actually does surprising amounts of damage to the Netch, but never again afterwards. But it does have an interesting enchantment where it will drain your magicka by 200 points and do a bunch of damage to an individual once per day. I initially thought that this Horripilate effect was actually an insta-kill after using it on some guards, but after using it on stronger enemies, I realized that wasn't the case. And the effect likely just does 200 damage and ignores armor, which is nice in certain circumstances, but again, it only works once per day and depletes your magicka reserves a bunch. Simply put, this fork is a literal joke, but that is supposed to be the point given that it is the artifact of Sheogorath, Daedric Prince of Madness. To get this artifact, you must first do chores for the sexy Master Neloth until you gain access to his staff enchanter, or rather my staff enchanter. Then make your way to the retching Netch and read the note that's stabbed onto a barrel next to the front door. Bartering into 29th place is another addition to the Anniversary Edition, and that is Bittercup, the Daedric artifact that belongs to Clavicus Vile, Prince of Bargains and Wishes. Bittercup is a one-time use potion that permanently increases your strongest attribute, either health, stamina, or magicka, by 20, and decreasing your other attributes by 20. The problem with Bittercup is that the effects are absolutely fucking useless once you reach the mid to late game, as you will barely even notice its effects. It would have been infinitely more interesting and consequential if instead of 20 points, the Bittercup actually increased your strongest stat by 50 or 60 points. I understand the modder Chris Takahashi was trying to copy the stats Bittercup had in Morrowind, but Morrowind's attribute system was far more consequential than Skyrim's. A game where you can use enchanting and alchemy to raise your attributes to godly levels. But because of how inconsequential it is, it's going to be ranked rather poorly. Besides, people only do the mission Bittercup is in, not for the artifact itself, but for the sick-ass gladiator helmet you can get. To get Bittercup, read the journal titled Mysterious Altar at the Inn in Falkreath and head to the roadside ruins northwest of the city. Dreaming into 28th place is the Skull of Corruption, a staff that is claimed by Vermina, Daedric Prince of Dreams and Nightmares that can be found in the base game. Meaning this is technically the worst Daedric artifact for this video if you don't count the anniversary ones. The Skull of Corruption is a staff that does 20 to 50 damage depending on how many dreams you have collected from sleeping people. But the problem with this artifact is the same that can be found in nearly every staff in the game. It does very little damage, you can't increase the damage, and you can't level up a skill using it unless you have a mod like the Minimalistic Perks mod. The Skull of Corruption also only stores 5 dreams at a time and expends a dream after each shot from the staff, meaning the staff gets weaker the more you use it. Also, in order to get the staff, spoiler alert for the questline surrounding it, you will have to kill Erendur, one of the coolest followers in the game. Simply put, acquiring this staff is not worth it, and I would rather travel the world with Erendur than wield this piece of shit any day of the week, and Vermina sucks anyways. If you want to acquire this artifact or unlock Erendur as a companion, simply speak to Erendur at the inn in Dawnstar. But trust me, unless you're trying to get the Oblivion Walker achievement or are playing a super evil character, just go with Erendur instead of the staff. Ruing into 27th place is the Rueful Axe, which is a weapon coveted by Clavicus Vile once again. This guy cannot catch a break. This axe, which can be found in the base game, is a terrible weapon for a number of different reasons. First, it is the slowest melee weapon in the entire game, meaning while it is a battle axe, it has a swing speed slower than every warhammer. This is quite comical since it is one of the lightest two-handed weapons in the game, so, you know, have that make sense. But it also doesn't even do a tremendous amount of damage, only being as powerful as a glass battle axe, meaning Ebony, Daedric, Dragonbone, and Stalrim battle axes do more damage and are faster. The enchantment on the Rueful Axe is also not that useful, doing 20 points of stamina damage per hit. Now, if this were a stamina absorption enchantment like some other artifacts, it would be a lot better, but it's not. You could say it's nice for making sure enemies can't do power attacks, but 1, who cares, and 2, stamina absorption does the same thing, but better. And 3, the damn axe swings so slow the enemy will regain enough stamina to do a power attack anyway, so you might as well mail them the stamina damage. What's even more funny is while the Rueful Axe is technically a Daedric artifact, it does not count towards the Oblivion Walker achievement, which is a very clever trick by Clavicus. To get this artifact, be level 10 and talk to the blacksmith Lod in Falkreath, then talk to Barbas himself, then after some questing, kill Barbas instead of sparing him. But why kill him when you can spare him and get a better artifact I'll talk about later? Howling into 26th place is the Ring of Hircine, which belongs to the Daedric Prince of the Hunt named, well, I'll let you figure that out for yourself. The Ring of Hircine basically allows you to turn into a werewolf as many times as you want without having to wait 24 hours to transform again. Now, I have 2 problems with the Ring of Hircine. The first is that being a werewolf, in my opinion, is super weak in Skyrim. See, as a werewolf, sure, you can fling people in the air and swing your claws, but your werewolf claws don't scale super well, and your regular weapons will typically deal more damage. Additionally, you don't have any armor rating as a werewolf, so you can easily get one-shot by archers and die super quickly. The only good thing about being a werewolf is that you get a passive bonus in both werewolf and human form called Beast Blood that gives you a 100% resistance to disease. So if being a werewolf is already super weak, why would I want an artifact that allows me to be a super weak werewolf more often. And even if being a werewolf was OP, waiting 24 hours is not that bothersome. My second big problem is that you get this artifact by sparing a werewolf named Sinding, but the problem is that Sinding is an individual that brutally murdered a child. Sure, it was an accident because he couldn't control his transformations, as the ring of Hircine he was wearing was originally cursed by Hircine himself, meaning the Daedric Prince is somewhat to blame here, but that really doesn't change much in my opinion. Sinding is a danger to everyone, and the world is probably better off if he was dead, so you might as well kill him and get a better Daedric artifact as your reward. To get to this ring, you will need to talk to Sinding in the Falkreath jail, if you can get him to come up to the goddamn bars. Biting into 25th place is the Ring of Namira, owned by the Daedric Prince of Darkness and Decay and all things disgusting. Now, the Ring of Namira allows you to do something very unique in Skyrim, and that's allowing you to become a cannibal. Not only does the ring increase your stamina by 50 points, take notes Bittercup, but dining and dashing on corpses increases your health by 50 points and health regeneration by 50%. Now, these stats are pretty good for the early game, and especially if you are role-playing a green-packed wood elf, but it's honestly not that great in the mid to late game, unless you're on survival mode and have to deal with hunger. And the ring in Skyrim is weaker than its Oblivion version, which reflected damage and spells onto its attacker, which was far handier. I also don't like the quest giver Eola, who tries to gaslight and manipulate you into thinking you're a cannibal, which always annoys me, and I often just kill Eola outright and never do the quest. To acquire this disgusting ring, simply offer assistance to Brother Verilus in Understone Keep. Now we are heading more into the mid category, and skinning into 24th place is Saviour's Hide. And I say Savior instead of Savior because that is how I pronounced it as a kid and how I will continue to pronounce it until the day I die, and there is nothing you can do to stop me. So, Saviour's Hide is another Daedric artifact owned by Hircine, which you get for killing Sinding rather than sparing him, and is a superior reward to the Ring of Hircine. It is a light armor chest piece that provides a 15% resistance to magic and a 50% resistance to poison, and has the same armor rating as leather armor. My biggest issue with the enchantments is that they are kinda useless, especially if you are going for a hunter-archer character that avoids getting hit, which this armor is more aesthetically for. Also, it does suck that this armor has the same rating as leather, especially since you can craft a full suit of leather armor at level 1 with no perk investments. But while it's not that powerful paired with Forsworn armor, it actually looks super cool for a female hunter character, just not on a scrawny male dark elf. It is not strong whatsoever, but aesthetic-wise, it's kinda cool, which is why it's ranked here. And you get this armor the same way you get the Ring of Hircine, but by killing Sinding instead. Speeding into 23rd place is the Ring of Khajiit, a Daedric artifact that has belonged to two different Daedric princes, Meridia and Mephala. But it belongs more to Mephala lore-wise. The Ring of Khajiit, simply put, allows you to do two things. It allows you to cast a cheap invisibility spell called Hide, which is super nice for the early game, and it allows the wearer to move 10% faster, which is a very rare effect that only exists for Anniversary Edition items, which the Ring of Khajiit is. My biggest problem with this ring is simply there is a superior ring called the Ring of the Wind, which allows the wearer to move 15% faster, which you can get from fishing. But because it fortifies speed and allows the player to cast an invisibility spell early in the game, I think it deserves its place here and not further down the list. To get this ring, you must complete a bunch of fishing quests for Viria, and eventually you will be given a bounty letter called Lost Wares. Drinking into 22nd place is the Sanguine Rose, which belongs to Sanguine, Daedric Prince of Debauchery, Revelry, and other things. Sanguine Rose is a staff that allows you to summon a leveled Dremora to fight alongside you. The only issue I have is that with Conjuration, you can eventually summon 2 Dremora Lords to fight for you instead, which are more powerful than the ones from the staff. And the Dremora you summon with the staff counts as a summon, so you can't have 3 Daedra running around, unless you give the staff to a follower who can use it instead, allowing you to potentially have 3 summons causing havoc. Now, on paper, this sounds super fucking cool, and Skypothesis has a build called the Daedric Warchief showing this in action. But I was unable to get my followers to use the staff. So I don't know if it's actually possible, but if it is, I would potentially rank it higher because then it would be a perfect utility item for your follower. But because I couldn't get it to happen, it will remain down here. To get the staff, you must be level 14 and find Sam Gwyvain in any tavern and play a drinking game with him. Transcribing into 21st place is the Oghma Infinium, a powerful book that is the Daedric artifact of Hermaeus Mora, Daedric Prince of Knowledge and Secrets. This book is a one-time use item that allows you to increase your warrior, mage, or thief skills by 5 levels, but then you cannot use it again. This book is extremely useful if you are trying to level a skill that's at around level 95, or trying to level skills that fall outside of your character's expertise. The problem is that as long as you just play the game, all the skills you use will get to level 100 eventually. And with the ability to legendary your skills and reset them to level 15 anyways just to level them up again, you will end up forgetting you ever used the Oghma Infinium in the first place. It's a really good read that everyone should get for its small utility, but there are just so many other artifacts with much more permanence. To get this book, head north of Winterhold and speak to Septimus Cygnus. Fun fact, you don't need to advance in the main quest line to speak to Septimus and retrieve the Elder Scroll or collect the Oghma Infinium. Dawning into 20th place is Dawnbreaker, a sword that is cherished by Meridia, Daedric Prince of Infinite Energies and Light. Dawnbreaker's not the most powerful sword in the game, only being on par with a glass sword and doing 10 points of fire damage, but it does have an additional enchantment where when one undead enemy dies, it causes an explosion that makes other undead run away, which can be useful in certain Nordic ruins where the undead are everywhere. And Dawnbreaker has one of the highest charges in the game, as you can hit the sword 312 times before you must fully recharge it with a soul gem. I'll be honest, most people hate this sword because of the quest attached to it that has become a big meme, but I actually really like the look of the sword. And while weak, it is very nice for an early character, provided you don't get absolutely slaughtered by Malkorin and his ice magics. But there are much better artifacts, which is why it is just in 20th place. To get this sword, you must be level 12 and find Meridia's beacon at a random boss chest and listen to the words,
"A new hand touches the beacon."
Unpredictably entering 19th place is
The Wabbajack!
a staff that is the artifact of, once again, Sheogorath. The Wabbajack is an interesting staff that can cast a wide variety of effects on your victims. It can deal 60 points of fire, frost, or shock damage, make enemies invisible, heal enemies, turn enemies into various animals, and even turn people into sweet rolls or gold coins, among other things. The Wabbajack is a very fun staff to use, but it only has a charge of 20, meaning you will need to recharge it just as the fun gets going. But in all seriousness, something that Uncle Sheo hates, the Wabbajack is really just a Daedric artifact you use once and then never again, as it's not really that useful or reliable compared to normal weapons and spells. To get the Wabbajack and have some fun, simply speak to Dervenin wandering the streets of Solitude near the Blue Palace. And before you know it, you'll be minding someone else's business, eh? Get it? Ah, fuck you, that was a really good joke. Whispering into 18th place is the Ebony Blade, a katana that is claimed by Mephala, Daedric Prince of Murder, Sex, and Secrets. You know, the kind of stuff that Argonian maids love. The Ebony Blade is a two-handed greatsword that is actually the weakest in the game, as it only does a base damage of 11, while the Iron Greatsword does 15 damage. And you can't even temper this weapon and upgrade its damage without mods, so why isn't the sword in last place with the damn Fork of Horripilation? Well, because of its unique swing speed and enchantment. See, the Ebony Blade swings as fast as a one-handed weapon, making it faster than any two-handed weapon in the game. Additionally, it has an enchantment that absorbs more health the more friends you kill with it, starting from absorbing 10 points of health all the way up to 30. And the weapon never needs to be recharged, meaning you can become the ultimate tank and never need to use a healing spell or pop a potion. But the problem is how you need to kill 10 people who consider you a friend in order to upgrade its enchantment. And this is a big ask for many people, and yes, you could just use exploits to get it anyways, but I am someone that does not like using exploits. If you are like me and don't know who you'd kill, be sure to watch my video on who to kill with the Ebony Blade. To get this weapon, you must be level 20 and ask Hulda in the Bannered Mare for rumors. Unfortunately, some anniversary quests have Hulda bugged, so you must ask her for a bunch of quests you don't give a fuck about before she will mention the Blade quest. Thanks for that, by the way, Todd. Shining into 17th place is Azura's Star, owned by the Daedric Prince of Dawn and Dusk, Azura. Azura's Star is basically a very powerful soul gem that carries any type of white soul, meaning the souls of animals and lesser creatures, and will never break when enchanting. This is actually a very powerful utility item that works for all builds and is useful from the early game all the way to the end game. But if it's so good, why is it in 17th place? Well, the reason is because there are two versions of Azura's Star we can get, and this version is admittedly the weaker of the two, but still viable. Especially since you will statistically face more undead and other creatures like Draugr and Falmer than you will human beings, so it is nice. But they aren't all gonna have grand souls. I'll talk more about the superior version of it later, but you get Azura's Star by speaking to Ariana Yennefer and siding with her instead of Nelacar. Clawing into 16th place is the Helm of Oreyn Bearclaw, a helmet which is a skull resembling that of a saber cat that is claimed by Malakath, Daedric Prince of Curses and Orcs. The Helm of Oreyn Bearclaw is a Daedric artifact I never really liked in Morrowind and especially Oblivion, mostly because there's no armor or clothing that matches it well at all. It is a powerful helmet that has the same armor rating as a Dragonplate helmet, and while not incredible, its enchantments are nice for a warrior barbarian character. The helm regenerates stamina 20% faster and fortifies stamina by 70 points. I do wish the helm was a bit darker like the Bloodworm helm, but overall it is a decent helm, especially if you are an orc or Bosmer, as the helmet has ties to both of those races. But the helm doesn't really look good with any armor, even Dragonbone, and for that reason it is just in 16th place. To get it, you must enter the Necromancer's lair of Gallows Hall right next to Mara's Eye Pond. Bargaining into 15th place is the Masque of Clavicus Vile, which is the superior reward you get from Clavicus Vile in his quest, much better than the fucking Rueful Axe. The Masque is a heavy helmet that has the same armor rating as a Daedric helmet, and it does look decently well with ebony armor and looks surprisingly good with the Telvanni robes. While it is a powerful helmet I would absolutely recommend for anyone role-playing a mercenary character, its enchantments aren't really that useful. The Masque does three things: fortifies barter by 20 points, fortifies persuasion by 10 points, and regenerates magicka 5% faster. First, fortify barter isn't really that useful, since even with a low barter skill and speech skill, you still sell items for a decent price. And also there is the Blackguard hood on Solstheim, which fortifies barter by 25 points, meaning it is more useful to wear for selling instead of the Masque. Second is persuasion, which is absolutely worthless, as persuasion checks scale off of your speech skill, and as long as you play the game and sell stuff, you'll be able to pass most of the speech checks in the game. And even if you don't, it's only a minor inconvenience, and you can either get some speech potions, wait until you have a higher speech skill, or find another way around to advance that quest. And considering the novice mage robes increase magicka regen by 50%, and the more powerful master robes regenerate magicka by 150%, 5 is just so inconsequential and worthless. I do love the mask aesthetically speaking and think it looks great on many armors and clothes in the game, but utility-wise, there are just better helmets in the game. You get this helmet the same way you got the Rueful Axe, but just don't kill good boy Barbas. Unlocking 14th place is the Skeleton Key, an invincible lockpick coveted by Nocturnal, Daedric Prince of Thieves and Shadow. Now, the Skeleton Key is a very powerful artifact that acts as an unbreakable lockpick and is useful for nearly every type of build in the game. But the only problem is that you cannot keep it if you want to progress through the Thieves Guild questline and become the Guild Master, which I think is pretty dumb since you could keep it in Oblivion and break open doors and chests to your heart's content. And unlike Oblivion's lockpicking system, which I personally find to be annoying and difficult even though I have gotten better at it since the remaster, Skyrim's lockpicking system is beyond easy, and if you have the technique down, you can break open a master level lock and only lose a couple of picks in the process. You also can't spam break lock in Skyrim like you could in Oblivion, making the Skeleton Key still not as useful. Because in Oblivion, once you get that key, you forget the lockpicking minigame even exists. So while the Skeleton Key is useful, the fact that you can't keep it really brings it down ranking-wise. To get the Skeleton Key, you must progress through the Thieves Guild questline until you kill a rat bastard traitor. Coming nice and orderly into 13th place is the Sword of Jyggalag, a massive greatsword that belongs to the most powerful Daedric prince, Jyggalag, Daedric Prince of Order. I'll be honest, the Sword of Jyggalag in Skyrim and even Oblivion is one of the most mid-Daedric artifacts in the game, because while it does do really good damage, dealing the same amount as a Dragonbone greatsword, it doesn't have any enchantments to go along with it. Now, that might be great for some people, as you can actually add your own overpowered enchantments and turn this weapon into the most powerful in your game. But you can do that with a fucking wooden sword, so lacking an enchantment isn't going to boost it ahead in the ranking. The sword also just doesn't look good in my opinion, as it looks like it was carved out of an Ayleid wall, but it is still a strong weapon, which is why it is here. To get this sword, you must already have completed the Sheogorath quest where you get the Wabbajack, and when you return to Solitude afterwards, there will be an earthquake which will start the quest that leads to getting this sword. Banishing into 12th place is Scourge, a Daedric mace that belongs to Malakath once again. Now, Scourge is very powerful for one specific reason. It is the highest damaging mace in the game, excluding the Madness mace, so it is very powerful on its own. However, the only issue with this mace limiting it from being higher in the ranks is its useless enchantment of banishing summoned Daedra up to level 36. I don't know about you, but I have never banished summoned creatures because I either just kill it or kill the summoner instead and the summoned enemies disappear anyway. And the banishing effect doesn't even work on non-summoned Daedra, which are often the most dangerous, so who the fuck cares? Scourge is a very powerful mace, but you could easily just find a mace with better enchantments, like our next artifact. To get Scourge, you must be level 46 and receive a letter from a courier called Stranger's Plea. Tormenting into 11th place is the Mace of Molag Bal, the unholy mace that belongs to Molag Bal himself, Daedric Prince of Domination and other horrible things. Now, the Mace of Molag Bal is actually a very powerful mace, doing as much damage as a Daedric mace, and you can get this weapon as early as level 14. On top of that, the enchantments on the mace are fine, I guess. Not the best, but also not useless either. The mace can soul trap enemies, which is handy, and it also damages stamina and magicka by 25 points, which is okay, but I would have preferred if it absorbed 25 points of those attributes instead. The only problem I have with this weapon is that it's just far too evil looking in my opinion, not only belonging to the most evil prince, but it just looks so sinister. As if the weapon should just be wielded by an evil vampire. And as someone whose favorite Daedric prince is Boethia, I have to admit I'm not too thrilled on how you must help torture and murder a Boethia worshipper to get the mace. Now, this is a powerful mace, but there are even more powerful Daedric artifacts we have yet to speak about. To get this mace, you must be level 14 and speak to Vigilant Tyrannus in Markarth outside the abandoned house. Hiding in 10th place is the Grey Cowl of Nocturnal, a powerful artifact that belongs to, well, Nocturnal. The Grey Cowl is a very famous item that can be acquired by playing through the Thieves Guild questline in Oblivion and becoming the Grey Fox. In Skyrim, the Grey Cowl is only as strong as an elven helmet, which doesn't really matter too much since it is a helmet suited for stealth players who don't need high armor ratings. It also has very useful enchantments, fortifying sneak by 25 points, fortifying carry weight by 50 points, and able to detect living creatures all around you, all of which are extremely handy for a thief playthrough. It does have a sort of downside, however, as when you wear the cowl, you will be attacked by guards on sight, which doesn't make much sense to me since I don't see why Skyrim guards would hate the Grey Fox as much as the guards in Cyrodiil. And especially since if you progress in the Thieves Guild storyline, all the guards are corrupted by the Thieves Guild and look away from all their activities. But waving that discrepancy aside, the idea of wearing a cowl that makes all the guards hostile would actually make a thief playthrough even more fun in my opinion. So I do like the addition, even if it does break canon a little bit, and is one of the reasons why I don't consider these Creation Club mods canon in the first place. But boy, do these artifacts pad out the runtime of this YouTube video and give House Telvanni more money. To get this item, find a thief near the Riften Graveyard and follow the instructions in the letter he has to the, well, letter. Warding into 9th place is Spellbreaker, a powerful shield that belongs to the Daedric Prince Periite, Lord of Pestilence and Disease. Spellbreaker is one of the more slept-on Daedric artifacts in my opinion, mostly because the quest for it is so out of the way, but it is literally the best shield in the entire game. See, a normal Daedric shield has a base armor rating of 36, but Spellbreaker has an armor rating of 38. Meaning excluding the Madness shield added in the Anniversary Edition, it is definitely the most powerful shield in the entire game, which is crazy since you can get this shield relatively early in the game. It also has a very unique enchantment where if you block with Spellbreaker, it will create a ward that will deflect spells up to 50 points of damage, which is exceptionally useful against mages and especially dragons if you are just a sword and board character with little to no range. It also synergizes super well with the block perk Elemental Damage, which reduces incoming spell damage by 50%. These two effects don't stack, but when the ward on Spellbreaker gets broken, you can still resist much of the damage hurling towards you until your ward comes back online, which happens very quickly. My only complaint with Spellbreaker is that I'm not a big fan of its outward design, and I much prefer its design in Oblivion instead. The quest to get this shield is also really fun as you get to kill diseased cultists with some toxic powers. To get this quest, you must be level 10 and happen by an afflicted refugee, or be level 12 and go directly to Keshet Periite's Shrine, northeast of Markarth and west of Karthwasten. Eyeballing it into 8th place is the Staff of Sheogorath, and I think you already know who this staff belongs to. This staff is without a doubt one of the most powerful staves in the entire game because of its ridiculous paralysis effect. See, the staff doesn't just paralyze one enemy, it paralyzes every single thing that ever blinked within 75 feet for 10 seconds. This staff could easily go into 1st place if it wasn't for the fact that it can only be cast 7 times until it is depleted, and paralyzed enemies can't be damaged. But fair enough, because it is still powerful as hell. The Staff of Sheogorath Sheogorath is a very useful backup utility weapon to use for all types of builds, and if you use a certain star I'll mention later, you can dominate the entire battlefield. Pro tip, use this staff in Skyrim Civil War. You will not regret it. You acquire this staff in the same questline you get the shitty Fork of Horripilation in. Just do chores for the sexy Master Neloth until you get access to the staff enchanter. And head on down to the Retching Netch Corner Club and find a glowing letter. Falling into 7th place is Volendrung, a massive hammer claimed by Malakath. Volendrung is a very powerful warhammer that is one of my favorite Daedric artifacts in the Elder Scrolls in general, and in Skyrim it is my favorite two-handed weapon. I could go on about its lore, but this video is strictly gameplay focused, so I'll stick to that. Now, while Volendrung is considered a warhammer, in Skyrim it actually has the swing speed of a battle axe, so while it only does as much damage as an ebony warhammer, it's better to compare it to the Daedric battle axe, which does 25 damage. Now, on top of Volendrung being the fastest warhammer and still dealing high damage, it also has a very powerful enchantment that works so well for two-handed builds. And that is absorbing 50 points of stamina per hit. This might not sound like much, but when you swing this massive weapon, you will basically never lose stamina since you're absorbing so much of it, meaning you can perform as many power attacks as you want, at least until you run out of charge, which happens after 23 hits. Volendrung is just really great to use, especially if you're playing an orc character, since this weapon is beloved by all those Malakath lovers. To get this mighty hammer, you must be level 9 and go to the stronghold of Largishbur, southwest of Riften. But I would recommend waiting to do this quest until you're around level 20 at least, since you will be facing many giants. Branding into 6th place is Goldbrand, a powerful golden katana that belongs to the Daedric Prince Boethia, Prince of Plots, Conspiracy, and Murder, and also my favorite Daedric Prince. Goldbrand is a sword that deals as much damage as a Dragonbone sword, which is awesome, but it also has an enchantment that deals 30 points of fire damage to enemies, which is great, and it takes 60 hits until the enchantment must be recharged, which is better than some of these other artifacts that give out after literally blinking. There's not much else to say about this artifact, as it's very straightforward and powerful, and one of my favorite weapons since it's related to my bae, Boethia. In fact, you might have seen Neloth equipped with Goldbrand in my previous videos because I like Boethia so much, but there is another artifact that Neloth once possessed. To get Goldbrand, you must travel to the sick Helm of Boethia and read Aranya's journal found on her corpse. Slicing into 5th place is Mehrunes Razor, a very sharp and very powerful dagger that belongs to Mehrunes Dagon, Daedric Prince of Destruction and Change. The Razor is a powerful dagger that deals as much damage as a Daedric dagger, but also has an enchantment where you have a 1.98% chance of instantly killing an enemy on hit. This dagger is immensely useful for both mages and assassins alike, and you would be a fool to throw this dagger away. In the quest Pieces of the Past, where you get this dagger, you actually have the option of not reforging it and just getting some leveled gold instead, which is absolutely stupid, and something you should never do unless you're playing some goody two-shoes character. Besides, Silas Vesuvius is completely out of his depth anyways, and you might as well let the Mythic Dawn die once again and finish what the Champion of Cyrodiil and Martin Septim started. Not that Silas is actually part of the Mythic Dawn, that was his ancestors, but still. And fun fact, but the sexy Master Neloth once possessed Mehrunes Razor until it was wrongfully stolen by some acrobats and circus performers, which is very unfortunate. To get this razor, you must be level 20 and receive a pamphlet from a courier guiding you to a Mythic Dawn museum. Possessing 4th place is Umbra, a very powerful greatsword that sort of belongs to Clavicus Vial. It's a long story. Umbra is a possessive sword that slowly takes over the mind of its users, but of course I'm sure you can handle yourself, of course. Anyways, Umbra deals as much damage as a Daedric greatsword, but its real power is its enchantments. Umbra is able to soul trap victims for 20 seconds and absorb 25 points of health and stamina, which is phenomenal for a warrior character, and much better than the damn Mace of Molag Bal. Now, there does seem to be some controversy around the implementation of the sword, as some people believed it was destroyed in the Elder Scrolls novels Lord of Souls and the Infernal City, but from what I've read, it was never actually destroyed but absorbed by Clavicus Vial, and Umbra has a recurring theme of escaping the clutches of Clavicus. So its implementation in the Anniversary Edition doesn't actually break canon, but I am still of the belief that the Anniversary Edition creations are as canon as any other mod on the Nexus. To get this corrupting sword, you must enter Champion's Rest, a tomb located east of Shore's Stone and north of Riften. Sniping into third place is the Bow of Shadows, a mythical bow that is said to have been forged by Nocturnal herself. This bow is the most powerful in the game as it has high damage on par with a Daedric bow, but unlike the Daedric bow, its draw speed is exceptionally high, with its draw speed actually being higher than that of Zephyr, which is the fastest bow in Skyrim without the Creation Club crap. So the Bow of Shadows is not only super strong, only being outclassed by the Dragonbone bow in damage, but it is also the fastest, meaning the bow has the highest DPS in the entire game, and it's not even close. But that's not all, as the Bow of Shadows has an enchantment that casts invisibility for 30 seconds every time you take it out. This is incredible for players that play stealth archer characters, which is everyone, and the best part is that there is no charge on the bow, so you can exploit that draw speed and invisibility to your heart's content. I am not an archer guy personally, as I like to get into the action with daggers and blades and only use magic for range, which is why it's simply number 3 for me. But I can easily understand why this would be number 1 for many people, as it's honestly quite game-breaking. To get this bow, simply speak to Preventus Avenici or Brill and ask for something to do. Shrouding into second place is the Ebony Mail, a piece of ebony armor that belongs to my beloved Boethia once again. Now, I love the Ebony Mail for a number of different reasons. The first is that it's owned by Boethia, which is super cool and based. The second reason is that it has a slightly higher armor rating than normal ebony armor, meaning if you ever want to make an ebony warrior character, this is the armor you want. Third is that you deal a passive 5 points of poison damage to enemies that are super close per second, which isn't a lot of damage, but it does add up and can wipe out low-level enemies. And also, the effect of poisoning enemies is super badass when they get cloaked in absolute darkness. And the final reason is that the Ebony Mail has the muffle effect, meaning you move completely silently when you wear the armor. This is the perfect armor to wear for my personal favorite type of builds in the game, which is a Shadow Warrior that uses stealth and combat combined. While I don't make build videos anymore because they don't get any views, talking about it right now really makes me want to make a fucking Champion of Boethia build, because it is just so much damn fun. In case it wasn't obvious, the Ebony Mail is one of my favorite Daedric artifacts in the entire game. However, it isn't that useful for mage-like characters, which is why it is just number 2. But the next artifact has amazing utility for all types of builds. And now it is time for the best Daedric artifact in the entire game, an item that is extremely useful to power and charge up all the other powerful Daedric artifacts on this list. And that is the Black Star, the corrupted version of Azura's Star. The Black Star behaves the same way that Azura's Star does, as it is an unbreakable soul gem that can allow an infinite number of souls to pass through it. But the reason why it is better than Azura's Star is because it can hold black souls, those of the 10 humanoid races, as opposed to the white souls which belong to animals and other creatures. Black souls are better better to use for charging and enchanting because any person, be them a lowly bandit to an arch necromancer, has the same sized soul. Racists get real silent when this little bit of information comes up, and as long as you have a soul trap spell or enchantment on a weapon and raid a bandit encampment, you can basically reap the souls of the entire camp and have virtually unlimited charge on your enchanted weapon. The Black Star works with basically any playthrough as well, be it a warrior, mage, or thief, as they all use enchantments at some point in time or another. And you don't even have to be a quote-unquote evil character to acquire it, as Nelacar the Mer who helps corrupt the star refers to Azura as evil. The only reason you wouldn't want the Black Star is if you were a dark elf that respects and worships the Reclamations, being Azura, Boethia, and Mafala, or just your run-of-the-mill Azura worshipper. And let me tell you, as someone who mains a dark elf in most games and loves Azura and the Reclamations, it is very difficult for me to not corrupt Azura's star. To get the Black Star, you must go to the Shrine of Azura and end up helping Nelacar instead of Arania. And that is all I wrote, a video where I ranked every single Daedric artifact in Skyrim. There were some that I omitted from this list, like Shadowrend and Nerve Shatter, but that's because lore-wise, there is no guaranteed Daedric prince that owns them. And just because an item is of Daedric origin does not mean it is a Daedric artifact. And besides, they were Creation Club mods anyways. Hopefully people won't be too upset that I included them in this video, but the polls speak for themselves, and I really don't want to make two separate videos on the same subject, especially when I can include all of them in a longer video and make more money. I enjoyed making this video and will probably make more ranked videos in the future because they always perform the best, and these videos are how I blew up on YouTube in the first place. You know who else I enjoy? My channel members, and they are Mirak, The Proud Prince, JJ Ensid, Milani Stilla, Carson Friday, Dalton Rupert, Cosmo, Jorinish Evento, Serene Molly, Doc Smoothie, Shinigami James, Broken Happy, Winter Raven, Blood of Cheese, Vivid Void, Argentis, Metal Health, Sov Dark, Gillernt, Ranger Squad, Luxie, Abdullah the Goat, Caden, Kirill Gaming, I Love House Halalu, Flexi, Grabowski, Bane Hellborn, Katie Harper, The Ember Raven, Cat Lassie, Joel Rhaenyra Targaryen, Awea Ann, Elia J, Drink Tea With Me, Tonic, 24 Seconds, and Foodening. So with all that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
I suppose you want to be asked nicely. Very well. Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful